Welcome to Arthouse Legends, where high art and geek culture collide. This is the MovieDude, Eric.
And I'm Chris Tondevold.
And on this episode, we're going to be discussing the state of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. We're going to be looking over the last three phases, kind of get an idea of where we think it is right now, and what we'd like to see, and what we think we will see when it comes to the future of the most important franchise in movie history. Alright, so before we get started, Chris, I'm curious, what is your familiarity with the MCU? Where did you come in? What did you think of the MCU overall?
I've seen everything that there is to see as far as the movies goes. I've been a fan of Marvel since the X-Men show. So that was definitely my jam, the X-Men animated series. So going through everything, seeing it from start to finish, from the original Iron Man to Endgame, it's been a hell of a journey, and I think they've done a wonderful job so far.
So I'm actually in a lot of the same boat. My big Marvel entry was in fact the X-Men animated series. That made me a huge fan of X-Men right off the bat. Just like you know, Gambit is my jam. I'm still waiting for that Channing Tatum movie, and I still firmly believe that it will happen at some point. But for the MCU, I was there opening night. I actually showed up at the first screening in Houston for that, and I've seen every Marvel film in theaters, most of the time on opening night. And I will say that overall, I can definitely understand why this is considered to be one of the most important, if not the most important, cinematic franchises in film history. And that's taking into account Bond, that's taking into account the Nolan trilogy, Lord of the Rings, all of them. In my opinion, the Marvel Cinematic Universe changed movies forever. And maybe I'll kind of go into why I think that's both a good and a bad thing later on. But for the most part, I have a unique perspective on the MCU, kind of from the idea of both being a nerd, a geek, and a film fanatic. Someone who analyzes film the way I do, and I have for almost 25 years. I really started getting into it when I was 15, and now it's interesting going to be looking at the cinematic universe as a whole. So I guess since you've been here from the beginning, what do you consider to be some of the standouts of the MCU?
The first one that comes to mind is going to be Winter Soldier, just because that was such a departure and still a very big standout all the way through compared to the rest of the films. You also have Civil War, which I think they did a really good job setting the stage and allowing us to see the fact that they could actually juggle so many characters at once. Mm-hmm. And give everybody's screen time in there and actual big story and development throughout that movie. I think they did a really good job with that. You have the flip side of that as far as the not so great parts. So Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, because Whiplash is a terrible villain, but the Mandarin turn and flip, that's still probably one of the biggest pieces of, I guess, controversy. I think that's probably a good way to put it, because some people like it, some people don't. I'm kind of neutral on it. I think it was cool to do something new and different and let Shane Black kind of do what he wanted to. But I was really disappointed with the fact that it just turned into basically just like a CGI battle at the end of it. But yeah, those are kind of my standouts. I think there are a lot of forgettable ones too, like Thor 2. The only thing that I remember was that it was supposed to be Christopher Eccleston, being fantastic because he's my favorite Doctor, and he just showed up and did nothing.
Honestly, I know that I'm going to get probably a little bit of slack here, but I actually like Iron Man 2. And for the most part, Thor 2 was kind of forgettable, with the exception of I love the portal battle at the end, which I thought was a lot of fun. But that said, Iron Man 3 was the worst of the MCU films until another film came out called Spider-Man Homecoming.
What?
Yeah, Spider-Man Homecoming I have serious problems with. I absolutely love Far From Home. That actually made my top 20 list of last year. So that says a lot about what I thought about Far From Home, considering that it was coming off of the heels. And I'll be honest, there's quite a bit of the MCU films, and I'll talk a little bit more about it later on when we kind of go into our massive retrospective, but a lot of the MCU films kind of got forgettable and meh to an extent. And so for me, the ones that really stood out were Iron Man, definitely because of lowered expectations. Iron Man was never a comic book hero that I was excited about. The only reason why I went and saw Iron Man and was excited about Iron Man was the fact that Jon Favreau was directing, and I've been a fan of his since Swingers. And Robert Downey Jr. was playing Tony Stark. And that was the only real reason why I was at all interested in seeing this movie. And I was impressed. I really liked it. Dark Knight was better. I don't think anyone's going to argue that one. But I did. But the thing is that when the Incredible Hulk came out, about a couple months later, and I started to realize, wait a second, they're tying these movies in together. Is it possible that, is this? I asked the question at that time: is this going to be a kind of a Easter egg thing, or is this going to be more tied together? And as the film started going along, and you started to see characters show up, when Coulson showed up in Thor, and it was actually significant that he was there. When we started to see other Avengers starting to show up in other people's films, Iron Man 2 was probably a little bit they were forcing the idea of the of the Avengers, maybe a little bit too much. But one thing that I appreciate about Iron Man 2, and why I actually thought it was that it was kind of necessary at that particular point, was because Iron Man 2 was a comedy more than it was an action film. And to me, that was showing that Marvel is not going to be... Marvel could be capable of doing something different with their superhero films instead of just doing superhero action films, if you know what I mean. And
definitely. They've been basically balancing that act and making sure that there's a nice form or a nice level of brevity and levity with everything. That's what they've done a really good job balancing out the heavy CGI action with some of the actual more practical stuff, and then with that good line of comedy. I mean, I really liked Ant-Man, the first one. I thought that was really great, and I think also that they do a really good job picking out the actors for them to fill these roles. I was kind of in the same boat with you when Iron Man came out, but I didn't know Jon Favreau as a director, but I definitely knew Robert Downey Jr., and I also knew the story of Iron Man and the fact that Robert Downey Jr. went through all of basically Iron Man stuff in real life.
Well, that was actually one of the reasons why I was excited. Well, first off, because Robert Downey Jr. is an incredibly funny guy. I mean, if you've seen his films prior to Iron Man, you know that he is well-rounded. He is dramatic. He's capable of great comedy. He has lightning-fast improv skills. He is, in my opinion, a true artist of an actor. And one that, even in that year, we had Tropic Thunder, which came out that exact same year as Iron Man. And he showed yet again that he was capable of doing something unique and be able to get away with the impossible. Which, if you've seen Tropic Thunder, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And so, for me, when it comes to Iron Man, it comes to and the other aspect to it is that, yes, he had lived the Tony Stark lifestyle. He battled his demons. In fact, when I heard that he was playing Iron Man, I was kind of surprised because before he was announced as Iron Man, you know, he had gone to jail for his addictions. And so I was like, wow, that's really surprising that he would be given such a big role. Although I was wondering if it's going to be like a big movie or if it was, is this going to be another Spider-Man or is this going to be another Fantastic Four? But with Jon Favreau involved, it's like, okay, well, I'll give it a chance because Jon Favreau is capable of taking something very interesting and do something and make something out of it, or he could make Zathura again.
I forgot about that movie.
Zathura and The Lion King are going to be in the same wheelhouses as Elf, as Swingers, and as Iron Man. I mean, we're just going to have to be honest about this. He has highs and lows, but even, but the thing is that I will still go see a Jon Favreau movie because he's a director, no matter what else he does, because when it's high, it's really high. And so, yeah, and that's the same thing with Sean Gunn, with James Gunn, with Guardians of the Galaxy. I'll be honest here, I laughed my ass off when I heard that Marvel was going to take a chance with this franchise, with this story. I mean, I had heard about it. I made the talking tree jokes and the raccoon jokes, just like everyone else. And then I saw that first trailer, and I'll be honest here. The image of the Guardians in the lineup, that was all. That image right there was enough to sell me that I was going to go see this movie. And then the movie itself sold me that it was one of the best films of the 2010s. That's
for sure.
So Guardians of the Galaxy is an incredible film. Volume 2 just as good in my opinion. Maybe it's just because Kurt Russell is the man, and that it was good seeing him have fun in a role again. Especially considering that it seems like recently all the movies he's been in, he seems to be grumpy. It looked like he was having fun, and you could tell that he was having a blast as this film.
Well, it's a definite departure from Bone Tomahawk, that's for sure.
That's true. I love Bone Tomahawk, or I should say, I feel like saying love Bone Tomahawk is too strong, because it's one of those like. I know the mastery of the film,
right?
But like it is brutal, Yeah. It's like people who say I love The Road. Like I get what you're saying, but I think love is not the word you're meaning on that one.
Strong respect, strong respect.
It's like but the thing is that Marvel had there have been some extremely interesting movies made out of them. Some that were generic as well. I enjoyed Age of Ultron, but let's be honest, it was kind of pedestrian. The Avengers, which I actually did a podcast, it was for my old podcast called Arthouse. Called Quantum Tavern, which we had a full-on 2-hour discussion about the Avengers, and I mentioned that it was a lot of fun, but there were some serious problems. And the thing is it was funny because one of my big problems with Avengers is that I had a problem with S.H.I.E.L.D. and that S.H.I.E.L.D. Seemed too authoritarian, in my opinion. And I mentioned that the helipad, the fact that it could just fly over whatever country it wants to, and there's no one going to be saying anything about it. And lo and behold, what happens in Winter Soldier? It addresses S.H.I.E.L.D. and the problem with S.H.I.E.L.D. And then you see the same it actually starts to answer those types of questions. Even in Avengers Age of Ultron, it answers those questions. And, and then of course, Civil War, which you just mentioned. And I have a story about Civil War I want to talk about just for a second because my daughter, I introduced her to the MCU and understand that she's 9 now. So her first real Marvel film was Ant-Man. And she loves Ant-Man, by the way. But I took her to go see Civil War. Civil War was, I believe, her first MCU film in the theaters. And I understand she enjoyed all of the Marvel films. And after we came out of that movie, I asked her what she thought of it, and I thought she was going to say she loved it. She said, I hated it. Absolutely hated it. And I asked her, why? Why did you hate it? Because I was surprised. And her opinion, and she still holds this opinion, by the way, is that the reason why she hates Civil War is because the heroes should not be fighting one another. They should be fighting together. And the fact that they turned on each other so easily and didn't talk to each other just really upset her. And that made me really proud. That was her opinion. That was one that she held very strongly, and she kept that opinion. And, maybe it'll change later. Maybe she'll understand when she gets older. But the fact that she made such a grown-up decision about a movie, especially a Marvel film, really made me proud, if I may say so. But
yeah, I dig that stance. I think knowing that whole story of Civil War from the comics, you're always ready for it. But if all you is a fan of the MCU and you just see this split, like it'll probably mess with you a little bit because these are the people that you look up to, and you don't want to have them fight for sure.
And that's really where I come down with these particular films. Those are some highlights. That said, there have been some movies that I absolutely were kind of bored by, and that I'm a collector. I'm a Blu-ray collector, and I love having all the movies. I have not owned Iron Man 3 because that movie was, I don't want to say bad, but it was so disappointing. And understand, I'm a huge Shane Black fan. I wanted to enjoy Iron Man 3, but I didn't like the twist. I didn't like the portrayal of PTSD in the film. And on top of that, the ending, I understand what the ending was going for. I just don't think that it succeeded in that level. That said, though, that's not the worst of the films. As I mentioned, Spider-Man Homecoming, which I really wanted to enjoy because I enjoyed Spider-Man's introduction in Captain America Civil War. My big problem with Homecoming is the same problem I have with Lady Bird, which is another movie people have given me a lot of crap over not liking, which is that the movie wants us to like the main character when the main character is overprivileged. Everyone likes the main character. Everyone likes Peter Parker. Everyone wants him to be everyone wants to be his friend. That's considering that one of the things about that what I liked about Peter Parker in the Raimi films and in the Amazing Spider-Man films is that he's kind of a loner. he marches to his own beat. He doesn't grovel for the attention that we see in this Spider-Man, especially the way he grovels to Tony the way he does. Really rubbed me the wrong way. I didn't like the fact that he basically quit school, and when he decides to come back, it was just, oh, okay, you can come back. Like, there's no stakes, there's no consequences for his actions. Even when he sinks a tanker. One of the things I liked about, again, going back to the Raimi films and going back to what I know about Spider-Man in the comics, J. Jonah Jameson was always there to tear him down. Any mistake he makes, there's going to be a consequence. And Homecoming didn't have that. And spoiler for Far From Home, hell yeah. I'm sorry, that is... Maybe that's one of the reasons why I love Far From Home, even if it's like for 5 seconds, knowing that, again, Spider-Man is going to be held accountable for his actions. That he's not going to be just treated as some sort of messiah. I like that. And so, again, that's kind of where I am with Far From Home. But the film that I think is the most overrated, and I did an episode a couple of years back on this, or it was just a slight discussion I had about this movie, but Black Panther, in my opinion, is one of the most overrated of the MCU films. It is bland, boring. I really didn't care for T'Challa at all. He, again, came off as overprivileged. Killmonger could have been an interesting foil, except that the film didn't know if he should be an anti-hero or a misunderstood hero. It's like it kept bouncing back and forth. Like, yes, he wants to murder a whole lot of people, but he has a point in what he's doing. And I kind of like that, but at the same time, it's just that the film didn't make it a strong decision one way or the other about this character.
I don't think they knew what they had with him. Well, I don't. Okay. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying they had Michael B. Jordan, who, and I'm going to just say this right now, he is going to be perhaps the last movie star ever. When George Clooney's out of the way, when Johnny Depp is out of the way, I guess you could say he's out of the way right now, but when all the smoke clears, Michael B. Jordan, in my opinion, is probably going to be the last genuine movie star. He's going to be able to move on from MCU. He's going to be able to move on from the franchises. His name is going to be, his name is going to last no matter what. And so you have Michael B. Jordan in this film, and you give him a good role, but you don't really establish who his character truly should be, or kind of how the film thinks about this character, right?
Right, yeah. To me, like I said, I just don't think they knew what they had with him, because he was in... was he in? Yeah, he was in Fantastic Four before this, right?
Yes, or Fantastic.
Whatever it was, right? And he's always clearly one of the best parts of whatever movie that he's in, and the charisma that he has should have been apparent, and it wasn't. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it's just something where the producers and the directors and the writers just didn't have, because it's almost like to your point, they weren't sure if it was an anti-hero or if it was just like a misunderstood piece of it, or they were trying to make him into a villain, but everybody could see kind of where he was coming from, because his character made sense, and the passion that was coming out of him made you like him a lot more. Just the style, the charisma that was coming out. I mean, you're going to latch on to him as soon as he gets on screen every single time. And I just don't think that they knew that, and they didn't see it ahead of time. So they kind of write themselves into a corner where you have, I think you're pretty right as far as one of the last movie stars, because he is going to be around for a while, and I think that he has that repertoire of serious dramas plus action star. But I think killing him off, so to speak, because I don't know what will happen in the future, but killing him off, I think, was one of their first major missteps.
Yeah, I agree. It would have been better if he survived. I think that he would be a great villain to bring back. That said, though, we can talk about kind of where they're going to go into the future with MCU in just a moment. And there is a way they could bring him back that I would be all for to an extent. But just to kind of reiterate and just to say kind of my last word on Killmonger is Eric Killmonger has a lot of the same strengths in his character as another Marvel villain who is considered to be one of the best in Marvel's history, and that's Eric Leischer, Magneto. Both characters have kind of the same arcs. Both have a genuine grudge against the world for something that's happened, not just to him, but to his people, and he's angry about it. But what the X-Men films did, and again, you have to give it to Ian McKellen as Magneto, and you would also say again with Michael Fassbender as Magneto, is that they were able to channel this villain and make him a sympathetic villain, one that we still want to see him stopped, but that we also, in our heart of hearts, want to see him find a peace, to find some sort of happiness, to kind of let go of that anger and to live is what we want with those. And I don't know about you, but I wanted the same for Killmonger. I wanted him to let go of his anger and to do something positive with that. And a lot of that goes on to Michael B. Jordan's acting and to Ryan Coogler's writing. I think he did a great job there. It's the presentation. It's how they... It's like they wanted to agree. And I think that Ryan Coogler did... I feel like he wrote Killmonger to be in the same vein as Magneto. But I feel like Marvel needed to have a villain, or they wanted to more villainize him, and so there's a kind of a conflict between what the director and what the studio wanted. And Ryan Coogler is in the same kind of position as Shane Black, where you have writer directors. In fact, if I'm not correct, Ryan Coogler and Shane Black and James Gunn are the only 3 writer-directors that are in the MCU. Everyone else has had a whole writer's room kind of putting stuff together, right?
That sounds right. The only question would be Favreau, but I think that's more of traditional Disney movie.
No, Favreau has a whole writer's room for every one of the films that he actually only directed 2. But no, the only 3 writer-directors are those 3. And James Gunn, I'll be honest here, James Gunn was blessed in the fact that no one had high expectations for Guardians. And so he was kind of using that to his advantage. He knew how out there his vision was, and he took advantage of a blind spot that Marvel had. And, the fact that they put it in August says everything that you need to know. They didn't think that this thing was going to fly. And then it becomes one of their they turn one of the most obscure Marvel properties into a multi-billion-dollar franchise that, he built himself on that. And that's one of the reasons why they're willing to wait 3 years for another Guardians film after they royally fucked up.
Well, I think too that it's it's very much a Marvel talent to get bigger actors do roles that are completely different and out of their wheelhouse for the most part. So Bradley Cooper as Raccoon and obviously Vin Diesel as Groot. I mean, who would have thought that would be who played those characters?
Now, I could believe that. Well, first off, with Bradley Cooper, he's only throwing his voice out there. He doesn't even have to be on set. But the one that really shocked everyone was, in fact, that chubby guy from Parks and Recreation being turned into an action hero.
Yeah, because that was his first one, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, he's been in other comedies. He was in Her prior to this, but
but this is his first action role. This is his first kind of reinvention.
Well, he lost nearly about 100 pounds and had to put on some big ass muscles for his shirtless scene, and yeah, he transformed himself. I don't know if have you seen the picture of Kumail Nanjiani because he's going to be in Internals.
That makes me feel so terrible about myself. Just looking at it now, do I appreciate the fact that he also talks about how much he suffered through everything, because you basically have to give up literally everything just to kind of look like that. I appreciate that. Now, the fact that he still looks like that makes me feel terrible about myself.
Well, not to toot my own horn here, but about 5 years ago, I was 325 pounds. In fact, if you go onto the YouTube channel, there's still videos up there of what I look like. And over the course of about 11 months, I was able to trim down 125 pounds. It is possible, but it does require some dedication. And I don't look buff as Kumail. I probably could if I wanted to put in the extra work. But it is possible. And I just admire what these guys did. And I'll be honest, one of my inspirations for taking this leap was in fact Chris
Pratt.
Chris Pratt and also Mark Hamill. When before Mark Hamill went back to play Luke Skywalker, I don't know if you saw him, but he was a little hefty. But
yeah, because he was just doing voice roles, right?
Yeah. So in the course of his age, man of his age, you don't have to worry about looking good in public. So he enjoyed a comfortable life, but as soon as it looked like he was going to be back in front of the cameras, he lost the weight, and there you go. So, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Chris, for helping me on my journey. But yeah, the thing is that, the reinvention, and you can say that with pretty much anyone who works in Marvel, with the exception of Scarlett Johansson, who usually, she does have to do more, more physical work for the stunts, but for the most part, she looks pretty much the same. She, from the first, from before she took on the role of Natasha Romanoff to to where she is right now. I mean, from what you see in the Black Widow, she pretty much looks about the same physically. Right?
Yeah. I don't, because I remember her in Ghost World.
Yeah.
So every time that I look at her, I always think of Ghost World and just kind of that weird, one of her first roles that she's doing. So she's super young in it. And now that she's this, I don't even know how to describe her. She's perfect all the way through. But seeing that transition and seeing that growth, I think is really cool. And I think also that when you have a platform like Marvel, where at that point they were starting to get bigger and bigger and bigger, and elevating them into the spotlight like that, I think it really, really shows the level of their career at that point, because she's coming from, I think, Lost in Translation. Is that right?
Before she did Iron Man 2, she was doing a lot of indie films at that particular point.
That's what I was thinking, because it was a big platform to just jump from. I want to say it was Lost in Translation, but I might be wrong. But either way, it's that style. She was going into more indie stuff, and that she's been doing that for a little bit. And just like with Chris Pratt, you just skyrocket yourself all the way to the top, and the visibility of it is just insane. Even Chris Evans is the same way. So he was starting to gain traction. I remember seeing him in Losers, which is one of my favorite roles for him. Mm-hmm. And then he just turns into this huge star. And I think one of the things that I appreciate about him specifically is that he's able to still do all the Marvel stuff, but do stuff like Snowpiercer, which is amazing.
Well, and he still does that. There's actually a Netflix movie. I haven't seen it yet, but I've heard some good stuff where he's playing this Israeli spy that is trying to get refugees out of Africa using this beach resort.
Right, I saw the previews for that. Yeah,
but the thing is, like, for me, Chris Evans. For me, I remember seeing him in Not Another Teen Movie and Cellular. Those were my two entry points for him. And then, of course, who could forget him as the original Johnny Storm? I mean, he was the best part in both of those movies. Yeah. One of the things that surprised the hell out of me was I was listening to an interview with Danny Boyle, who was promoting Sunshine at the time. And he says something that shocked the hell out of me. And he said that the hardest working, most dedicated actor he had ever worked with in his entire career was Chris Evans. Because he came to set earlier than all the other actors. He took every scene seriously. He did the best he could on every scene. He was that focused. And then I go back and I think back on Fantastic Four. Yeah, he's cocky, brash, a jokester, but you could tell that he was pulling and he was acting and he was doing the best he could, despite the fact that I would say almost no one else was, if I'm going to be honest. I mean, the rest of the actors felt like they were hamming it up for a 1966 Batman style. And Chris Evans, while he doesn't contrast, he doesn't feel like he doesn't fit in. He fits in, but he's really bringing those jokes in. He's really making his character feel like he belongs in the story and that you wanted to see him more often. And I did. Like I said, he was the best part of those two movies. And both movies made my worst of the years list on both years. So yeah, and then of course, who could forget Scott Pilgrim in the World? Scott Pilgrim versus the World, where he plays X number 2.
Yeah. Oh man, I forgot that he was in that. The vegan, right?
No, he's the movie star.
Oh, that's right.
No, Superman was the vegan.
That's okay. Yeah.
You can always go back to our episode on Arthouse Legends on Scott Pilgrim vs. the World to when we discuss this. But yeah, so Chris Evans, when I heard that he was Captain America, I was intrigued, but I was also nervous because I didn't see him wanting to go back into the superhero realm, because people go into superhero movies can be very nasty. I remember after Daredevil, how people treated Ben Affleck. And I remember how people treated Jessica Alba after the Fantastic Four. And I was just thinking, does he really want to jump back into this? And first Avenger was really good. Let's be honest here, Winter Soldier, definitely in the top 5 of the best Marvel films. And you could sense that Chris Evans is a large reason for that. There's a reason why when Captain America at the end of Endgame does what he does, and we will spoil it in just a little bit, but it actually has weight to it, and that's because
he's
go ahead.
Well, he's consistently one of the best parts of that whole franchise, and he has probably the most growth, I feel like, and the most depth all the way through.
Let's go ahead and let's get into this, because I really want to talk about where we stand with Marvel right now. If you want to think about it, phases 1, 2, and 3 ultimately come down to the arcs of Tony Stark and Steve Rogers. Those two characters, it's really their story. If you look at all the others, even if they're not even in the films, the entire arc of those phases come down to Tony Stark, from a man who was selling weapons and didn't care about the world and just leached off the death and violence. Ultimately, because of his association with Steve Rogers, was willing to make the call to sacrifice himself for the sake of the world. And then you have Steve Rogers, whose dedication to his country led him to self-sacrifice, and then be put into and to be displaced out of time, to have everything taken away from him that mattered to him, and having to live in a new world and to find a way to be at peace with that. Every Captain America and every Avengers film shows him trying to make sense of the world, right?
Yep.
And so when you get to Endgame, or actually you could start off with Infinity War. Captain America and Iron Man both lose, but the way that they deal with that loss is so different, which I find very fascinating, and it's something that has to be seen within the arc. Tony decides that he's going to, again, forget the world, ignore the world, kind of back off, and kind of go back to where he was. Captain America, again, goes back to where he does, and that is to care about others, especially when it comes to veterans. The scene with him in the VA circle was maybe my second favorite scene in the entire film. Yeah. Because that to me felt like what Steve Rogers would do. Like, that would be what that guy would do when things have changed as much as they have. You get the sense that he has to help at least somebody. Somebody needs help, and he is going to be there for that. And then to have them make the choices and make and how they deal with the final battle, I feel definitely shows their character and the arc overall in that film. You had to see the rest of those films in order to understand that arc, right?
Definitely.
But now those arcs are fulfilled. But here's the question: what do you think about the overall arcs when it comes to this? Do you feel like this is those two arcs, or do you feel like there's more to it, and then I'm missing something?
No, I think that's a pretty solid way to look at it. You're having Captain America. Really, I think that's one of the only ones besides Tony that we see really from the beginning to end. We get to know Steve Rogers from his time as basically this kid, this weak kid that goes in to sacrifice his body and hopefully for the better, and then turns into really the beacon of hope for America. And now with Tony, we get a lot of backstory within the series, which I really appreciated. And it's always them at odds, either philosophically or physically. And that really comes to an apex in Civil War, obviously, but even throughout the end of it, and just kind of that knowing of, especially at the end of everything, you have that huge amount of respect for both roles. Captain America, as far as assembling the Avengers, and then Tony Stark's sacrifice at the end, of letting everybody know it's going to be him at the end no matter what. He's Iron Man. He is it, and no one else can take that from him. And I think the stories follow them and follow them in a parallel way. And I think it's interesting to look at it starting with Iron Man, that first movie, and then realizing that the whole time we're following two characters, not just one. And we're knowing literally these are the only two from front to back, their whole story, their whole growth, and everybody is kind of along for the ride.
Yeah. But here's my question in regards to this. Do you think that the phases were successful? And if you want to, you can look at them from each phase. From phase 1, do you think phase 1 was successful, phase 2 successful, phase 3 successful, or do you think there were some any of them fail along the way?
I think each of them had successes and failures, but really it would pick up steam in the latter half. So you look at movies like Thor 2, where that's right in the middle of phase 2, I believe.
At the beginning.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
But that was such a hard thing to, I guess, kind of like bury. You know, you're going through all these different ways. They're setting up all these different stones that, if anybody has read the comics, they know what these sources of power are. So you have the Tesseract, you have the Mind Gem for Loki, you have the Soul Stone, and then what was the space one that was in Thor 2, I think.
Yeah, it was because of the portals.
Yeah, and then so you see that stuff, and I think for the most part each phase is successful. I don't see any real. They don't ever lose steam. They always continually push forward, and there was nothing that ever stopped them from going on and finishing that part of the story and going into the next one. Even when you had a movie like Age of Ultron, which everybody agrees not a super great movie, because I think it was really trying too hard to do a whole lot of stuff. It was doing a whole lot of setup instead of just being a really good standalone movie. And sometimes that gets lost in the shuffle. So I think for the most part they were successful. You had some weak spots, like I said. And what I'm excited about for the future is them to just go wild, have kind of an overarching maybe idea of what they want to do, but I want them to be able to push the envelope. Like I really want the horror aspect of Doctor Strange. I want the weirdness of WandaVision. I want all of that stuff in there, and kind of that grounded action of Hawkeye. I'm excited for all the different avenues that they're able to explore now.
Honestly, I'm going to say that I enjoy more MCU films than I don't like. And honestly, when it comes down to don't like, there's only two that I would put that I would say I didn't like. I even, to an extent, enjoy Captain Marvel, and I know that I'm somewhere in the minority on that one. And it's not just because Brie Larson is my future wife, but no, it's been my thing from the beginning of this podcast. I have a huge crush on Brie Larson. I've had a crush on her for over 10 years now, so I'm allowed this. Anyway, but that said, I'm gonna say that if they were interested in, if you're looking at the Marvel phases as getting closer to Endgame, if Endgame was the culmination of what they were expecting, Phase 2 lags in the sense of the momentum. Even if you look at kind of Age of Ultron, what exactly is Phase 2 building us up to when it comes to Endgame? The first phase is basically creating the look at it in a trilogy sense. Phase 1 is the introduction of the characters, bringing them together. right?
Mm-hmm.
Avengers ends that up. Then, technically speaking, Ant-Man was supposed to be the end of Phase 2, but let's say Age of Ultron, that Ant-Man's the epilogue, and that the Phase 2 ends with Age of Ultron. What exactly does that do? With the exception of that, it causes the world to slightly mistrust superheroes, but not to an extent where it causes them any serious backlash against the world. We have the Sokovian Accords, but that was more the governments, and even then, we don't actually see the governments turn against them. We have to take Thunderbolt Ross's opinion on that one, right? He's the one who says that the governments don't like you. We don't actually see the governments turn against the Avengers. So,
no matter how much damage or carnage that they actually cause.
Yeah. If we'd actually seen the world turn against the Avengers, if we had people actively saying, and I'm not talking about just, having Alfre Woodard, great actress, love her, scolding Tony Stark for 5 seconds. That's not it. We need to see the world actively go against the Avengers. Have them be blamed. If they would have done that, then Phase 2 would have been that would have shown a situation which would lead to where Endgame and the finale would have felt paying off Phase 2. Phase 2 is too extended. Phase 2 was basically a teaser for Phase 3, if we're being honest.
And I think they really missed the mark when it was coming to the little guy. So this is one of the things that I liked Homecoming, as far as that aftermath. What are the people on the street doing? Because they never really addressed it before. They had kind of talks and whispers about it. If you even look at like the Marvel TV shows like Daredevil, they mention it, but they don't show really the aftermath for what the Avengers are doing on Earth and how that affects the normal person.
What I would have liked with Homecoming, if they were taking my opinion on this, is if they would have treated Spider-Man as being inspired by the Avengers over becoming an Avenger. If they would have shown that after working with Tony Stark, it invigorates Spider-Man to go out and do more good, to not because he wants to try out and become a part of the Avengers, but if his goal was to take what he saw with the Avengers and the belief of the Avengers and do his part to save the day, and then have it brought down, kind of bring it again down to Ant-Man level, where you have something immediate for these characters and it has no larger implications. Say what you will about the Vulture, but let's be honest here, he's taking weapons from Stark Industries and he intends to do something bigger and badder with them, right? So it doesn't feel down to it doesn't have that ground level. And again, his aim is to be an Avenger, to be exceptional. And I feel like that's the wrong play. And I would love to see Marvel heroes that are local level. And think of it kind of like field teams, right? They are called up whenever the big thing happens and they need extra backup, but that they're not like trying out for the Avengers. Right. They're doing
Avengers West Coast, Avengers East Coast.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I liked about the Civil War, about the implications of Civil War, what kicked off everything, which was you had local level heroes inspired by the bigger boys doing their part. Of course, some of them decided to turn into reality TV for some reason, but that they're doing their part and they screw up. Which, of course, their screw-up is going to look bad on the bigger people. Because what happens if they screw up? There's an implication, but at the same time, it's localized, right? If they would have done that with Home, then that would have been great. And that would have I still have such a problem with everyone loving Peter. That's one of my biggest problems with Spider-Man 3. I hated the fact that when that movie starts, everyone loves Peter Parker. Everyone loves Spider-Man. Like, give me a break. I wanted to see him struggle. I want to see him have to earn that respect and love, not to just get it right off the bat. Hell, even in Captain America: Civil War, he gets Tony Stark's love for basically doing nothing. You know, we don't really see him earning Tony Stark's respect. And let's be honest, in Homecoming, he loses that respect because he is too brash.
Right.
But even then, I don't know. They just forgive him too easy. I'm sorry, it pisses me off.
I don't know. He's still a kid, so you gotta do everything with a grain of salt. But
with great power comes great responsibility. He has great power, and responsibility means that if you fuck up, you've got to get your ass beat. You've got to have someone there calling you out. That's why I love J. Jonah Jameson. Whenever Spider-Man fucked up, whenever Spider-Man did the wrong thing, whenever he took an easy path, even slightly easy, understandably easy, but still easy, J. Jonah Jameson was right there to make it look like it was the end of the world. So that it always made Spider-Man have to think more critically about every choice he makes. Because... Yeah, go ahead.
But if we're never going to get the Spider-Man that we see in the animated series, if we're always going to get a high school Spider-Man, you're never going to get that. And I think that's where I kind of like what they've done with him and his character with this, where we're going to grow with him a little bit and he's going to spearhead some of the newer stuff in there. And I do also like the fact that he's not the de facto leader after Tony dies. I appreciate that. But as Spider-Man goes, like my favorite depiction of him has always been the animated series.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a...
Which one, though? Because there's several.
The first one, where he's the college student, and with Doc Ock and all that. So the Amazing Spider-Man, from the 90s, I guess. Oh well,
yeah,
no, not
be careful,
yeah, from the 90s. I'm sorry.
Spider-Man
yeah,
too,
I forgot.
So.
I forgot that. I wasn't around. I wasn't alive. So whatever. The first one that I saw was the 90s one, and that's the only one that matters. Same thing with the X-Men.
There you go, millennial.
Right. So I think if you're not going to get that more mature Spider-Man, though, ever, you're not going to really have that battle to where he's really... And I guess the Sam Raimi ones tried doing it, but didn't really hit it nearly as well as it could have.
I disagree slightly because I think, especially in Spider-Man 2, Raimi's Spider-Man 2, they really...
that's the only one that I'm thinking of that really, really hit that. And again, it's also because Doc Ock is such a great character, and the depiction of him in Spider-Man 2 is phenomenal.
And that's true. Alfred Molina did a great job with that character. But I'm actually going to also kind of disagree in regards to like what Far From Home did. And one of the reasons why I liked Far From Home is because it does set up that, yes, Tony Stark, for some stupid reason, and maybe for his own shits and giggles, let's be honest here, I could definitely see Tony Stark on a whim just saying, give it to the kid. He has the ability to become Iron Man. And or the Iron Spider, however you want to call it. And there is the question of, okay, so who's now going to lead the Avengers? Spider-Man's too young, and everyone sees that, or I should say the audience sees that. The people post in-game don't, because they're already asking him, and there is that pressure of responsibility. So he could in fact be the leader of the Avengers by phase 4, phase 5. So I'm not actually discounting that. I think that in fact that's probably the direction they're going to go. And I like that because again, we're talking about responsibility. You know, it's requiring that Peter has to grow up, and it has to require him to grow up fast. And the fact that we now have J. Jonah Jameson back around, and the fact that the big twist, I don't know how they're going to get out of that one, but the big twist at the end of Far From Home means that he's going to have people against him, maybe even the Avengers against him. And so that, to me, again, puts him in a position of being the underdog again. He's not the beloved, everybody loves Peter Parker, everybody loves Spider-Man, but it puts him back to having to earn his title, earn that respect back, earn that from the people and from the Avengers themselves. And I guess that's a good place to start asking about, what do you think we're going to start seeing? You mentioned that you want them to go all out, but in what direction do you think that they're going to go with this? What do you think is going to be the next main villain, if there isn't even going to be one?
I think it'll probably end up being Scarlet Witch.
So you think that she'll turn villain?
Maybe not necessarily a villain, but something's going to happen. I think her psyche is going to break. And it's not something that I'm overly fond of, the idea of just the crazy woman kind of aspect to it. But with the loss of Vision, with the WandaVision series being basically portrayed as what is happening inside her mind, and then that going to be leading to different MCU movies, because I think that leads directly into the Doctor Strange, if I remember right, or vice versa. I could be wrong on that, but I think that having your most powerful being basically be one of your own teammates that just went crazy is going to be something that they're going to throw out there and probably do a great job with, like what they have been. And I think it's just going to be a psyche break. They might try to do basically a House of M with her without the mutants.
You just mentioned my favorite arc of X-Men. So I just got to say that right now. When you were bringing up Scarlet Witch, it's like, I would love for them to do House of M in that sense. I feel like there's a way that they could kind of do that in the Civil War manner, but I don't think that she'll be the main villain. She might be manipulated, and I think that would be a cool way to do it, but I don't know. I would not want that, though. I don't want her to be manipulated. I want her to make a choice that is a bad choice, one that she's probably going to regret, and one that is going to have ramifications for. That's what I would hope when it comes to Scarlet Witch in that sense. If that's what they do with that, and if they do, then honestly, that would probably be the boldest thing that Marvel has ever done. In fact, I would applaud them if they pulled that.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to think of other ways that they can incorporate other characters. Like there was some talks of Fantastic Four with some of the Easter eggs in Far From Home. Maybe they go with Doctor Doom, but I don't see that happening as kind of the big bad. Maybe they do the Kang the Conqueror. I think that would be kind of cool and really lean into the time travel. I think that would be fun. Mm-hmm. Maybe Dormammu.
Dude, you know, you're dancing around the one you know is going to be the next big bad. You know that it's going to be the next big bad because he is practically the biggest bad of Marvel. And that is Galactus.
Maybe. I just don't know what they're going to do with him. And because he's such a traditional Fantastic Four villain, I don't know if it would just be like a one-off.
Well, no, because quite honestly, so for those who are not familiar with who Galactus is, all three of you, Galactus is the World Eater. He is a big, massive guy with what looks kind of like a Tesla coil on top of his head, or two Tesla coils on the top of his head. He basically just devours worlds. That's his deal. Now he does that in phases. Now anyone who saw the Fantastic Four sequel, the Fox one, which first off I apologize that you had to suffer through that. They make out Galactus to be this kind of like gas, which I don't know why they do gases. Like they did the same thing with Green Lantern. I don't understand
know, man.
why they did that. But he's not. He is an actual corporeal body, big, massive, larger than the planet type thing. We're talking about thing that not only would the Earth heroes have to fight, but you would have to have the cosmic fight him as well. And the way that you say it now, remember, Thanos was, in the comic books, was way different than the one that came out in the MCU. And I would argue that the Infinity War Thanos was a good, solid villain. Endgame Thanos, that's the thing that baffles me about Endgame. They traded the well-rounded villain for a single-minded villain.
Yeah, and you kind of see that throughout the MCU. We can go back even to Iron Man 3 with the subversion in there, where it goes from the Mandarin character, where you think, that is the big bad, and then it ends up just being a CGI blast fight with I forget his name, but the Extremis.
You're talking about Guy Pearce.
Yeah, Guy Pearce. Yeah, I don't remember his character's name, but
technically he was Mandarin.
Right. Well, whatever.
Or I guess you should say that he was. Well, if you see the one shot that came with the Iron Man 3 DVD or Blu-ray, he wasn't even actually the Mandarin, but quote unquote the Mandarin. He was the big bad. But anyway. But
yeah, and what? So I think, well, like what to your point with Endgame is, when you look at it, all they wanted to do was really just build up to this big battle at the end, and it was that two-parter movie, which could have been definitely a whole one, where you have this nuanced villain, this very well-developed villain, and then next thing you know, all he's doing is bringing all his hordes to fight people again. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of how everything is with these movies, unfortunately.
When it comes to Endgame, there's a bit I like about Endgame, but there's two things that I really didn't like. One, I didn't like that they simplified the villain by basically bringing back an older version of Thanos that didn't have the same amount of pathos and sadness that this one had. This is not the Thanos that sacrificed his daughter for the sake of gaining his goal. He did not have that. He was robbed of that growth by doing what they did.
Right.
But that was my first problem. My second problem is I hate time travel, or I don't. I love time travel movies, but I hate time travel being used in this way of solving a problem. I feel like it's cheap. It was cheap when Superman did it, in the original Superman movie. It's just so damn cheap, especially if there's not going to be a complication or a something that's going to get messed up in the process. And I'm not talking about in a future movie. I'm talking about in the movie that you have. The idea of the butterfly effect, or well, I guess it's the sound of
The
thunder.
multiple timelines.
Yeah, where if you step on the butterfly, it changes 1,000 things. That's what I'm talking about. If there was no, I guess you could say maybe WandaVision is going that direction. I don't know if it does or not. I wanted to see immediate. I want to see something immediate showing that there's a problem, that there's a complication, that doing this is going to have a ramification, and just pulling Thanos from the past into the future is not it. It felt cheap.
And that's why I would like more. King the Conqueror would be kind of a good idea to bridge the gap between the Fantastic Four and the rest of the Marvel Universe, and lean into the time travel stuff. You also have Loki in there, probably just going to wreak havoc through everything because that's what he's going to do.
Another villain I would think would be good for the MCU if they could find a way to introduce this villain would possibly be Apocalypse.
Nah.
Well, no, I'm not talking. I'm talking about the idea of Apocalypse being a figure that has seen the future, who has a future that he wishes to protect, one that cannot be destroyed, one cannot be. You have to defeat his plan. You can't defeat him. And especially because he is so, he meticulously thinks out his plans as much as he does. I think that it would be a really good villain. But again, you'd have to introduce the X-Men. You have to introduce a whole other aspect of characters. And maybe that's not what they want. And quite honestly, I'm spitballing because I feel like Galactus is the one that they're going to go with anyway. But when it comes to Marvel, the villains are kind of on the sidelines. It's really what we want to see with the characters themselves. And I guess this is my biggest question. What would you like to see as in character growth from the characters that we do have? And what do you want to see with the new characters that we're being promised?
I'm very, very, very interested in a couple things. One, the Eternals and the Black Knight. I am very interested in seeing how that will shake out. I think that's going to bring a more grandiose vision of Marvel to everybody because of the time that they're looking at. You know, you're spanning millennia with these characters. So I think that's going to be very, very interesting. And then having I think it's Kip Harington that's playing Black Knight is going to be really cool because you're going to have kind of that mystical aspect of it, and then also have the possible time travel stuff with that. I don't know what they're going to do specifically with the Eternals, but I'm looking forward to that. Mm-hmm. I'm also looking forward to what they're going to do with the fallout of the Black Widow movie, and whether or not any of those characters remain in the MCU, specifically Florence Pugh's character. There is some talk about her being kind of that surrogate Black Widow for the future. So we could see that. I would be very interested in that. And I really want to see what they're going to do with Wanda and the Scarlet Witch as a whole. I think there's a lot of ways that you can handle that character. Overall, though, when you look at it, I just want good, solid movies and series. I don't even care if they are connected for the most part. I would be even fine with standalone great movies, and they all kind of weave in and out of each other as far as the timeline goes. Because that's one thing that I think was missing before, and they have so much freedom they've done their story, they've done their arc. Mm-hmm. You know, we're always expecting what's next, what's going to be the next big story. But if they treated it just like comic books, where you have these great one-off series or these great standalone issues, I would be even happier with that than them having to rebuild a whole story from scratch over the course of the next 10 to 15 years.
I can definitely understand where you're coming from, and I think that they're going to kind of go in that direction. First off, because this must be, I mean, don't get me wrong, they're making money hand over fist with this, but the overhead on all of these contracts must be through the roof.
Oh, yeah. Because they have stars. They have A-list stars. They have Angelina Jolie as one of the Eternals. Mm-hmm. Like, they have... And Disney has money, so I guess it is what it is, but...
Let's see how much money they have left after COVID-19.
Right.
I mean, let's be honest here. COVID-19 is going to cause a lot of problems with all industries, but especially when it comes to these larger franchises, it could have an impact on how many movies we see. It could have an impact on the amount of money that's spent on these movies. If people start not to go to the movies as often, I think it will kind of come back, but the question is, how long will it take? And especially if Marvel has 5 or 6 movies planned within 2 or 3 years, if they don't get people back in theaters really quickly for this, that is going to have an impact on their bottom line. But
yeah, I'm nervous to see how this will affect the overall scheme of things, and it's going to really push everything out of whack. They're already pushing Black Widow. Are they going to then push the rest of the series, the rest of the movies into... Because they could release all the series on Disney Plus or whatever, but if they're trying to coincide and go with the timeline and have everything be streamlined, this event that's happening right now is really throwing a big wrench into everything.
I agree with that, but I think there's one way that they're going to fix that, and you could say that they're already going in that direction, which is they're going to use multiverse, they're going to use splinters in the timeline, which means that they can make their next big event be kind of having those fractures kind of get worse, and it requires that the Avengers kind of come together in multiple dimensions to fix this, which would be interesting. And we kind of saw that with Into the Spider-Verse, so it is possible for them to kind of take from that, which would be interesting. But what I think we're going to see, if they do decide to go with a streamlined thing, they're going to... Marvel is probably going to play it safe, which is what they do every time. And I think of this as negative and as positive when it comes to Marvel. Marvel goes with tried and true formulas. They do not venture away from what works. Even when I was mentioning like the comedies of Iron Man 2 and Ant-Man, they still follow the same formulas that they did with their action movies. They just put more emphasis on those aspects. Like with the new Doctor Strange movie. Scott Derrickson, the director, who directed the first one, wanted to go in a full-on horror movie vibe. Marvel decided against that. They decided that they were going to kind of bring it back more towards an action level. Now, maybe his approach was absolutely wrong. But I know that what we're going to get is pretty much what we see with other Marvel films, which is one of the big problems that I've had with Marvel in the sense of it being artistic in that level. Because they're pretty much the same. It's a formula that they know works, and they're going to keep writing it until it stops. So if they do that, we're going to see 2 or 3 characters who are going to get... who are going to kind of rise to become the big players of the final phase, which will be the battle with the super big bad, which, like I said, would probably be Galactus. And in my opinion, those 3 are going to be Spider-Man, Falcon, or the new Captain America, and Captain Marvel. That's what I'm thinking, because those are the three that have the biggest arcs. Falcon has to live up to the mantle of the man he took the shield from, or that he got the shield from. Which I'm also kind of curious. Does that mean that he's going to take the super soldier serum?
I don't know. I think that because I don't think that he needs it, but I don't know, man. I think that would be very interesting. We'll see what happens with the Falcon and Winter Soldier show.
Well, if he's able to do everything that Captain America does, but he doesn't need the serum, then that means that Sam Wilson was already better than Captain America.
Well, I don't think that Sam Wilson is going to stop a helicopter from leaving the helipad. You know, he's not going to do that just with his big ass bicep.
Well, he doesn't need to do that. That's the thing. Like to paraphrase Tony Stark, we still got a Hulk.
Right.
I mean, that's the one that will do that. But if Sam Wilson is capable of stopping the same threats as Captain America, but uses his athleticism, his quick reflexes, without having to use the super soldier serum, without having to juice. Basically, this is like a natural athlete outperforming a roided athlete.
Right. Right.
And so for me, what would be great for Falcon when it comes to the films, I know that he still has his show with Winter Soldier, is how do you live up to the legend? Being the follow-up to the legend. Someone that has built a love and admiration, and now that you're taking on that mantle, you have to establish a name for yourself and creating a legend of your own. And I would love for that to be Sam Wilson's plight for the next few movies. That said, Spider-Man, again, also having to live up to the expectations of his mentor, as well as being the person that is willing, that is capable of putting himself above the needs of the rest. Because one thing that he absolutely failed in both Homecoming and Far From Home was he put his own needs in front of others, and it cost dearly. And that's something he still has to fight. And with Captain Marvel, which I'm hoping that the writers for her movies, figure this stuff out the same way I was really glad that they figured out the SHIELD problem after Avengers. Is Captain Marvel is one of those those indestructible superheroes that you really can't depower her without her losing what makes her interesting. But one thing that she also has is she is developing an apathy towards Earth and towards, because she's so superpowered, she doesn't have anything to risk. And so having her kind of return to her humanity and see her having to respect that her powers limit her in certain ways, and having that be her arc would be something I would love to see. And that would actually be the same thing I've been saying about Superman, that any kind of Superman arc needs to have the argument of Superman's humanity always in the question. That should be the one thing that should always be the thing that he fears losing, is that ability to be apathetic, to be sympathetic, to see the needs in others, and to have that be the arc, because he doesn't have to fear those things. He doesn't have to fear death. He doesn't have to fear his own mortal peril, and that with that come that he has, and that especially if he starts losing people naturally or unnaturally, that he would lose that. And I think that Carol Danvers needs to have that same fear. That same fear of losing those people, and if she does lose those people, what will she do at that point? Would she lose her humanity?
Yeah, you know I can dig that.
But that's if they're going with the same trajectory that they had with the last phase.
Right. And we just don't know. I think one of the other things that we kind of got gypped out of was really Hulk's overall arc because we only see really snippets of it. And while you were talking, I was just thinking if they were to be able to, maybe Bruce Banner really found that way to split himself and the Hulk, I think that would be a really cool thing to do, and have Abomination come back in and really try to incorporate that what was his name? Ed Norton movie.
Yeah. The Incredible Hulk. Yeah.
Yeah, and have that kind of incorporate a little bit better. I think that would be really cool too. There's just so many. I'm excited. There's just so many different things that they can do, and I feel like they have a blank slate. And
what I would like to see with Incredible Hulk, and this is only if they do the multiverse thing, because I think this would be a pretty awesome idea. World War Hulk, but the only one that can fight and beat the Hulk is the Hulk from another dimension. Think about it.
So we're gonna have two of them?
Two Hulks. Because we know, because anyone who's read the comic, the World War Hulk comics, knows that he basically beats the world. He takes.
Yeah, that was also kind of what he did with what they did with Scar, and with what is that movie, that Thor Ragnarok? Yeah, Jesus. Because they touched on it slightly. That's the story of World War Hulk.
No, that's Planet Hulk. That's a different.
Isn't that the beginning of World War Hulk though?
Well, Planet Hulk leads to World War Hulk, but
right.
At
Okay.
the end of and I know we're kind of comic booking out on people right now.
Yeah.
But at the end of Planet Hulk, when he basically conquers and becomes king of this planet, he goes back to Earth. And when he goes back to Earth, he was expecting a warm welcome, and they treat him with mistrust. And so at that particular point, he basically decides, well, screw this, and he basically takes over the planet. So, but there is a natural progression. It would be a lot more difficult. It would be like, again, why I say it would have to be the multiverse, because this would have to be the Hulk that didn't go through Infinity War and Endgame. But imagine imagine Professor Hulk, as we lovingly call him from Endgame, having to go up against the Hulk from the Incredible Hulk.
I think that would be a lot of fun. I don't know. I don't know how they would do it. I think it would be a lot of fun.
It's raw power versus a power that's been kind of tamed.
Yeah.
Can you fight your untamed, violent streak? And again, this would be kind of an internal thing. That would be great drama in that sense. It would be, again, kind of looking back towards the black suit Spider-Man versus red suit Spider-Man.
Right.
Having that kind of internal conflict, knowing the person that you were, the violent rage that you were, as opposed to the person at peace. The person at peace is not going to be able to tap into that violence and rage unless they lose something of themselves. So there's always that fear of you losing it.
Yeah, and I think also that What If series that they're gonna do, that's where all this is home. Everything that we're talking about, I think that's where it all stays home.
It might, but I would feel disappointed because I feel like that there's a way that you could tap this into the larger phases if you give it enough time in development, and probably Taika Waititi. Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
Taika Waititi would be able to catch this.
Yeah, we'll see what happens with Love and Thunder. I think that's what it is.
Yep.
I'm excited. I just love the title.
I love the title. I just don't like the idea of Natalie Portman coming back. And I love Natalie Portman. Black Swan is one of my was I think my number 9 film of all of the 2010s. But you could tell she did not want to be in the Dark World, and
I don't think anybody wanted to be in the Dark World.
No. Kat Dennings, Chris Hemsworth, Anthony Hopkins definitely Tom Hiddleston. They were relishing being in this movie, but you could see the disdain that Natalie Portman had, and quite honestly, I didn't really even feel her in the first Thor, and so unless Taika Waititi can bring something out of her that makes it interesting, I'm really I don't know. I'm on the fence, and the only reason why I'll go see it is because I watch all the Marvel films,
right?
But also because Taika Waititi definitely proved that he's capable of doing great stuff with Ragnarok.
Yeah, I think they're gonna do maybe a Lady Thor for it, where the storyline where she has cancer and got Thor's powers and the hammer and all that. So we'll see. Yeah. Like I said, I can't be more excited about the future. I am very sad that everything can be put on hold with everything that's happening, but I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that they understand that they don't have to be so rigid all the time. The stuff that happened with Doctor Strange, as far as the directors and the writers, makes me really nervous that it is going to be kind of that Marvel cookie cutter formula going forward, but I really want them to be loose, have fun with it, enjoy the series, make sure that What If series, that's probably the one that I'm most excited about, is as batshit crazy as you can make it. Because Marvel Comics is crazy, and I want that out in the world where everybody can see it.
When it comes to me and what my where I feel about Marvel is a good thing in the sense that it basically allowed us to firmly believe that anything is possible in film. Before Avengers came out, it was when my brother would have these wild dreams of having Avengers style movies and have all these things tie in together. I outright told him that it would not happen because it would cost way too much money to have all of those in one movie. It has now happened. It's not even that it is happening. It has happened. It is now over almost 10 years into our past that this has become a thing. That said, I fear that people have the expectation that all films need to be this big and that they're not giving a chance to make smaller movies, and that Marvel has decided that it's more worth it to spend $200 million on every one of their films instead of maybe doing something kind of like New Mutants or doing something like Deadpool or Logan for that matter. I feel like the Fox Marvel films, with their spotty record, mind you, but they were willing to take chances and with smaller budgets and get more out of them than some of the Marvel films have. I mean, let's be honest here. Doctor Strange did not break $1 billion. I think, if I'm not correct, it made like $700 million. Ant-Man was not a huge hit. It made money, but it wasn't significant. If you can bring these types of movies, give it a more modest budget, allow the filmmakers a little bit more leeway to do something unique and interesting, they could do something like Into the Spider-Verse, and audiences will love it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, my whole hope for this is for them to make good movies.
Yes.
Every movie be a good movie. I don't care what platform it's on, whether it's on Hulu, Disney Plus, or in theaters. I just want good stuff coming out, and that if they think too much and don't let these guys have more creative control in the future, it could backfire a little bit to where it's not as good as it could be. And we've seen that throughout. We've also seen them get burned too. I really want them to just let loose, man. I want to see all that nonsense that's I know is in the comics come out on the big screen or even a small screen and just let everybody have it.
Well, I just know that my daughter is now into Marvel movies. Not all of them. She did not have any interest in seeing Captain Marvel. She did not have interest in seeing Black Panther. But she loved the Avengers movies. She loved Ant-Man. She does love Marvel films. And she loved Into the Spider-Verse. And I know that if they made a Spider-Gwen movie, she would be the first one ready for her ticket. She might even camp out for a year waiting for it. And she's not the only one. I can't wait to see what they do. I just hope that they are willing to take chances. Like you said, take chances, go crazy, but at the same time, show some restraint. In the sense not of like making everything the same, but ease up on the budgets. Make something that's $50 million. Blade, we have Mahershala Ali Blade movie. We know for a fact that Blade movie can be done for 30, 40 million. Easy. It's okay if that's the budget for a Blade movie. Perfectly okay. Maybe,
it does not need to be $100 million movie.
It does not. I mean, Mahershala Ali is going to bring the acting. Give him a good foil. Deacon Frost, hell, I would love to see Donald Logue play Deacon Frost. If I'm being completely honest here, I think he would be great. But yeah, just do something interesting. Put the money into the writer's room. I don't know. I just don't want to see the same standard Marvel film over and over and over again, because I'll be honest, I'm getting tired of it. I was not that impressed with Infinity War. I was not that impressed with Endgame. I loved Far From Home because it did things with the characters that made me actually care. But if we keep going back to the Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Infinity War, and it's just the same movie over and over and over and over again, I might get to the point where I won't be interested in seeing. So, spice it up. Have some fun. $50 million. Make that your small budget Marvel film. But who knows? Maybe that's the budget for the Marvel Plus or the Disney Plus shows. Who knows? But I do want to say thank you so much, Chris, for joining me for this wonderful retrospective. Did you have any final words to say, or did you want to plug your show?
Yeah, I always want to plug stuff, get people to listen, because no one does. So you can find me. I'm on Ambition Radio. It's a podcast that I do outside of this one, where I interview people that have found some kind of balance between their life, family, career, and the pursuit of their passions, dreams, or hobbies. I'm on Spotify. I'm on Google Play, Apple Podcast, whatever's out there, I'm on it. So come find me. I'm on Facebook. That's the one that I use a lot. Say hi. Tell me how wrong I am on whatever movie opinion that you think is right, and we'll go from there.
And of course, if you're interested in anything else Arthouse Legends, you can check out our prior episodes on our website, arthouselegends.libsyn.com, or you can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio. You know the drill. You know where you can find us. If you want to talk to us, you can do so on our Facebook page as well as on Twitter at Arthouse Legends. Or you can send us a nice quiet email if you just want it between you and me, which is perfectly fine, especially after hours. Hey. You can do so at arthouselegends@gmail.com, and I will get straight back to you. Chris, thank you for joining me for this episode. This is the MovieDude Eric.
And this is Chris Tondevold.
And have a marvelous day!